Hello and welcome to the School Leadership Show. We don't have Mike here with us, but I am thrilled to share that we are going to be talking about the book, The Artificial Intelligence Playbook, time-saving tools for teachers that make learning more engaging. We are fortunate to have all three of the authors with us here today, Meghan Hargrave, Doug Fisher, Nancy Frey. I can't even begin to share their credentials fully without taking over the whole podcast, but let's just say that Meghan has become an incredible tech resource for educators. She's certified in ChatGPT, Google AI, AI for education, and she's trained hundreds of teachers worldwide. Doug and Nancy need no introduction. They've written so many books that are absolute must-reads for educators. I can't even count them. I bet you can't even count them, several of which I have summarized for the main idea. And while they are both professors of ed leadership, I have to say what makes their writing so impactful is that they continue to be teachers and leaders in a K-12 setting, so they are very grounded in the work. And they found some type of secret formula for writing books that makes their books eminently readable and digestible for busy educators. So with all of that, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So glad you're here. I am not going to start by asking, why did you write this book? Everybody knows why you wrote the book. But I'm wondering if we could just start with a teaser for teachers who are newer to the field. Like, what is one challenging thing that teachers find, time consuming or difficult that AI can actually help with?
I think each of us could answer that. Let's start with lesson planning. We design learning for kids, and AI knows a lot, and we can put in our standards, how many days we have, and we can get it as a thought partner, or sometimes we call a teaching assistant, to help us design learning. Meghan, what would you add?
I would add that we can use it as an in-the-moment coach. Just today, I was working with teachers and we were in the moment thinking, what are some other things that we could give kids to add comparisons to their information writing? And we pulled up AI, and it was that in-the-moment, just reminder that we needed to get our creative juices flowing, and we didn't have to wait until our next PLC meeting. We could do it right then and there.
And I'll add, this is Nancy, I'll add that another place that consumes a lot of time, important as it were, is in providing feedback and in being able to develop some really specific feedback kinds of prompts to be able to use in students' work. Boy, that can really enrich the student experience.
Those are great examples. Nancy, your volume might be a little low. I don't know if it's just for me, but those are great examples. And I love that two of them are you're already personifying artificial intelligence. Doug said teaching assistant and Meghan said in the moment coach. So we have an assistant and a coach. Excellent. Early in the book, you introduce the feelings or concerns that educators have about AI. You even share a common emotional trajectory that people go through when it comes to change, which we always go through in education. That trajectory in the book that you write is shock to denial to frustration. Sounds like stages of grief. Depression, curiosity, determination, and finally, familiarity. Why are you talking about emotions in a book about AI?
I think it is a highly emotional topic, as it is a tool that has come in and surprised all of us at some point in time. And it's also pushed a lot of us to rethink some of the things that we have done for a long time, some of the things we've wondered about, some of the things we've questioned. And so I find for those reasons that it's just a topic that is laced with lots of emotion. Every time we bring it up, you're going to have somebody in the audience who's feeling all of those words. And so just kind of naming that from the get-go, I think is really important, and acknowledging that it's okay to be in all of those phases, as long as we're willing to think about what's the next step to move along the trajectory.
I would add that when you name the emotions and you normalize this process, that we have emotions, we have emotional lives, and that when there are things that come up, there's excitement, there's fear, and that's part of being human. And so to say, hey, if you don't know anything about AI and you're feeling like everyone's talking about it and you don't, there's going to be an emotional response. When you first try it out and you might experience a failure or it didn't do what you thought it was going to do, or you feel like, oh, I'm really putting myself at risk, putting things in this system that I don't understand. We have emotional reactions. And so naming them, normalizing them has been a really helpful part of the process.
I'll add to that too, that emotion is really what underlies any kind of cognition, any kind of thinking. You can't separate out the emotional aspects of the brain from the reasoning parts of the brain. And all of us as humans, we teach through reasoning and we teach through emotion. And so we have to address both of those.
I'm glad. Yeah. Oh, did you want to add to that,
Yeah,
Megan?
can I just add really quickly, because this came up with a teacher recently, and we were looking at that change curve that you were addressing, Jen. And one of the things that the teacher said is they find themselves going through that cycle over and over again every time they learn something new with AI, but they're finding that they're not hitting the low lows as much anymore because they have a little bit of the shock and they don't go towards the depression, oh my gosh, it's going to take my job. They just move right to the phase of maybe a little bit of frustration figuring it out, but getting more excited about the integration of it. So that's been, I felt, was a really interesting perspective from a teacher recently.
That's great. I'm going to put a pin on the not take my job, but I just want to say thank you. I think for too long in education, whatever change it is, we think about changing systems and practices and processes, but they're people, right? So of course there's emotions attached to change, and you really can't just have change without addressing the human element, right? For schools to change, humans have to change. So I appreciate that. So Megan, you brought up this like, oh, AI is not going to take is AI going to take the job of our teacher? Like, how big is this new development for us in the field of education?
I mean, the quote we're hearing over and over again, and then feel free to add in Nancy and Doug, is AI will not take our jobs, or somebody who is applying for a job, AI will not take our jobs, but somebody who knows AI and knows our job might be somebody who would replace our job. To say it, I guess, in better words, if you've got two people applying for the same job and one person knows AI and one person doesn't know AI, the person who is more invested and more knowledgeable about AI is definitely going to take a lead just because of their expertise in that field. I do think knowing how to navigate AI is going to be a very important part of a teacher's job. It's going to be something that's added to job descriptions as a very important piece, but will not take the job in and of itself.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And I'll add to that too with a short story. There was a new technology that was introduced at Yale University, and the professors there had basically an uprising. This was going to ruin education. That new technology was chalkboards.
Yep.
As a profession, had to go through a period of time of figuring out a new technology and how it is that we use that tool. And it's okay.
So I appreciate that, before we get into the podcast, you calming us down. And of course, your book is going to help all those educators get the jobs because you're going to show them how to use AI. But I am curious how big this is. A lot of us thought during the pandemic, oh, this is really going to change the face of education, right? And now, we still go into classrooms. We know there's the teacher in the front and maybe students are not in rows. But do you see AI really changing the look of the classroom in sort of a revolutionary way?
I'll start with that one. I think there are places where it's already happened, where the classroom looks different. The teacher starts with a topic that we're learning today. Everyone goes on their AI system individually. They have back and forth, building background knowledge. And every kid, the way they respond, the way they form their prompt to the AI, the way they read the response and then ask a follow-up, they're all building background knowledge. That's very different than a traditional, everyone gets the same thing at the same time. There are other places where there's been no change. There are still places that have prohibition of AI. You cannot ever use it for a single minute for anything. And so I still, that's like many other innovations. You see early adopters, You see people starting to spread the ideas and innovations, and then you start to see a renorming of the profession. It is hard for me to imagine going back to a time where I didn't have AI on a daily basis to be my assistant.
Yeah.
And the teachers that Nancy and I work with at this school, they're using AI all the time. There's
Yeah.
no reason to prevent teachers from using that. It's a great tool.
And I like that visual you provided of the, all the kids on their screens, gathering that background information at different, different languages, different, all different ways. So I like definitions, and I think a great way to define something is by also sharing what it is not, and I'm sure you do too as humanities people. So could you provide a definition or description? What is AI and what is AI not? I stumped the expert.
Do you want me to take this one?
Go ahead.
I'll take this one.
We're being wondering who's going to talk.
I know we don't want to talk over people. I think first of all, not to be too lengthy in my definition, but AI is something that has been around for a long time. AI, as long as we've had the smartphones, AI has existed. It is technology that is acting in human ways. We added on to that a couple years after smartphones came out, and it was technology, computers acting in human-like ways and noticing patterns. Then we added on to that AI or technology acting in human-like ways, noticing patterns, and recognizing multiple intelligences. And then last but not least, we've gotten to what everybody's deeming as AI these days, which really what they're talking about is generative AI. And that's technology acting in human-like ways, noticing patterns, being able to read multiple intelligences, and then being able to generate human-like content as a result of that. It is not, it cannot think on its own. It is pulling from human-generated content. And AI is not a resource that we want to use without having some sort of human in control or human in the loop. So that would be where I would start. Doug or Nancy, you want to add on to that?
I think always when we're talking about AI in any form, to Megan's point, it's been around for decades. It continues to evolve, and it's been so seamless in being our lives that only now with the large language models in particular are we really taking note of it. But in fact, they've been there for a while, and using a new tool always is going to be a challenge. But there's potential around what it is that AI can do in our classrooms, and there should be some guardrails as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We should get to that. Okay, so they're not going to do the thinking for us. So let's bring our listeners through an example to bring it back to the concrete. So let's say I teach middle school, and we're recording this in December, and we come back in January after a week-long break, and I want some type of icebreaker to get the kids talking and feeling a sense of belonging again after us all being apart for 1 week or 2 weeks, however long you have for the winter break. Could you explain how I might use a prompt to ask AI for help? And could you share some of the guidelines you shared in your book to making sure my prompt is a good one so I get good answers from AI? Go ahead, Doug.
For example, you can say, I am a 5th grade teacher. My students have been on break for the past 2 weeks. Prior to break, we were learning about X, Y, and Z. I would like to do a rapid review that is super fun and engaging. My students like game shows, but they don't like to feel embarrassed or wrong. Give me 5 ideas that I can use on the first day back to school.
Wow.
If you design the prompt, so one of our professional colleagues wrote a book on co-intelligence, talks about treat AI like a person, but tell it the kind of person to be. So we have to be saying, like, this is what I want from you. This is what you do. And then I guess I'd also say, if those 5 that you got generated aren't great, tell AI it wasn't great. And I want this and this and this instead. So we're not doing an internet search where we search something and then what we get is what we get. It's a dialogue. It's an interaction. It's shaping it. Like, I like this part, but I wish I had more. Can you expand on this and add this to it? We have to get better at the back and forth nature of AI. I think people are still treating AI as a search engine and taking the first response as that's all I got. That's what I'm used to.
And I found it helpful in your book. You described, originally when you went to Google and you looked something up and you asked a question, you got a list of websites. Now it also has some AI, but with AI, it's synthesizing and giving you the answers. So, what I'd love to do is take Doug's example and sort of unpack some of the guidelines that you suggest for writing really good prompts. Because it sounds like, if Doug and I were working in the same school and he knew that I were a fifth grade teacher and I said, hey, Doug, what are some good ideas? I'm kind of assuming he knows what I was teaching the kids before the break, that X, Y, and Z, and that he would know a lot of the context of what I'm doing. But you're asking AI, so you have to have no assumptions, it sounds like. So could we take Doug's example and can you use that to introduce the guidelines to help teachers write good prompts to get just what they want? Yeah, Nancy, could you help us?
I'll take one element of that. And it's exactly what you were talking about, Jen. You've got to set the context. You need to tell that chatbot who you are, what your interest or motivation or purpose is, and who your audience is. As Doug said, I'm a fifth grade teacher. My students have been on winter break for 2 weeks. So being able to set out that context helps that chatbot to be able to tailor possible responses for all of that. So context is the first one.
Great. So context. Go ahead. Keep going.
Another one that I will add in is the specificity, which I think is one of the first things we bring up. And right away, Doug named out, he didn't say the exact things, but I'm a teacher who taught X, Y, and Z. So being really specific with content as well. And that brings in some of the context. But I always say, like, if you have it in your mind, put it in the prompt. Like, don't hold anything back. Don't have AI guess what lessons you were covering before break or what your content area is that you're teaching. Instead, name those specific things out inside of your prompt.
Very helpful. So we have context, specificity.
I'll add on one more. I would say format would be another one. I think Doug said, give me 5 ideas or give me a handful of ideas that I can choose from. So you could say, give me a bulleted list of 5 ideas. You could say, give me a table of ideas. You could say, give me short ideas to just get me started. So there's adding details about the format that you want the output to come in can also be really helpful. It can be AI can give you a very long response. It's gotten better at that. But if you just say, something generic without specificity around that format, it'll give you maybe too much information.
Yeah, so it sounds like both in terms of quantity, right? Do I want 20 ideas to choose from? But then also, right, do I want it bulleted? Do I want a narrative? Do I want, so those are great. Yeah, so to have some type of guidelines for when you're writing these prompts so you get just what you want. Did you want to add to that, Nancy?
It's important, too, that you understand that chatbot is learning about you. In other words, that dialogue is in part so that the chatbot gets a better sense of what it is that you're looking for. Don't overlook whenever you're asked to rate a particular response. Did you like this? Did you not like this? And don't hesitate to be able to tell the chatbot, I really like this part of what you said, but this other part really doesn't work for me. Or even this part is wrong. It's incorrect. And give it an opportunity to be able to learn about you, learn what it is that you're looking for.
So I like these icebreaker ideas for January, but my students are sick of working in pairs, or something like that, Or these are good, but they're all seated. I need to get my kids out of their seats and standing or something like that. So let's get into the heart of what you write about. So, well, actually, no. Let's hit some concerns before people turn off the podcast. So you talk about some of educators' biggest concerns, and I'm thinking primarily of bias and inaccuracy on the part of AI, and then I'm also thinking about plagiarism on the part of our lovely students. So, could you address both of these so people feel more comfortable?
I'll start with plagiarism, and I think we have to really think through that and redefine it. So, given the back and forth nature, it's not actually plagiarism. This text didn't exist before. So you're not copying someone else's work and representing it as your own. So you might say it's academic dishonesty to not disclose and to cite your sources. But I think we all have to think about a continuum. So at some point, I type in a prompt, AI generates it. I say, write me 6 paragraphs on the following topic, blah, blah, blah. And I turn that in as my own work. That is academically dishonest. And then there's one where you never use AI and you sit there with your brain on a blank screen and you try to write 6 paragraphs. And then there's everything in the middle. Like, help me with an outline. What should be the key points that I have? Could you draft an introduction that helps me think through how to explain that to a reader? I don't like this example in the introduction. Can you revise it? So one of the things that we do at the high school where Nancy and I are working is we require the students turn in the chat transcript. But we want to know the back and forth because it is a skill that we believe we're responsible for teaching students. Because for the rest of their life, another quote from Mollick on the co-intelligence, today's AI is the worst AI you'll ever have in your lifetime. It will always get better. And so for our students who are graduating, they will have this in their life. And we feel responsible to teach them how to ethically use this and to use AI so they can focus their energies on other things. So that back and forth nature, we want to see it. We want to see the kind of prompt you wrote. We want to see how much you took from AI versus how much you contributed. We want to see the revision process. We want to see the entire learning that you did with your thought partner, which could be any one of the chatbots that we use.
I mean, I think that's smart, right? Whenever as educators, our first response is, oh, let's ban this, let's ban that, right? As opposed to, how do you ethically use it, right? Big talk about cell phones in schools. And a number of people say, well, shouldn't we teach students how to ethically use cell phones or AI because they're going to have them in the rest of their lives? Before we move on to the bias part, isn't there also a second piece where we as educators are going to have to do a little more work, right? Because if as a teacher, my homework assignment is a set of, number 1, what's 1/2 plus 1/4? Number 2, what's 2/3 plus 5/8, right? If I just, every student, you don't even need AI, you could just use old school, right? So isn't part of it on our part changing our assignments to be a bit more AI resistant and bringing them to that level, like you said, Doug, of, what's the higher order?
And I know my colleagues want to talk about this, but I have to have a little confession. I was not great in math in high school. I was good in math in middle school. I was not great in high school because I had a teacher who just told us to do it on our own. And I couldn't do the work. And my best friend, Rob, did all of my math homework, all of it. I never did a single math assignment in 9th grade. Rob did it all. And I wrote his essays in trade to be fair. But my teacher didn't know that. I know this. And so this problem of representing things as your own has been around a long time. AI did not create this problem. We have a responsibility to get deeper and deeper into what are my students learning and how do I know it?
Thank you for that. Yeah, go ahead, Meg. Did you want to add to that?
I think just adding on to what Doug said, and then your question about AI assessments. One of the things or AI and assessments and assignments, I think to Doug's point, like, number 1, there's transparency around the fact that we now have a tool, just like spell check. We've got a tool that has a time and place for when it can be useful. And I think it pushes us to reconsider some of our assignments, some of our assessments. I was in conversation this summer with educators at the Visible Learning Conference, and somebody said, if AI can complete our assignments so quickly, or students' assignments so quickly, it should push us to reconsider those assignments in the first place. And it was like mic drop moment, because that's 100% true. If our comprehension questions, if our assignments are things that a computer can spin out in even generative AI, but can spin out or spit out in just a few minutes, there's better work we can be asking of kids. So I always get a smile from the crowd when I say, let's go to the very source we're worried about being the source that students will use to cheat on assignments. And let's ask it to help us make our questions AI resistant. Let's go to AI as educators and say, I'm worried my students are just going to use AI to complete this essay. What could I do to make it more AI resistant? I'm still not, to Doug's point, against students using it in the classroom at all, but I do think it's an opportunity to think more deeply about the assignments. For example, instead of just saying, what kind of person is this character? Maybe I'm going to ask students to compare and contrast the character to themselves, or not just name the theme of a text, but maybe name out how the theme in a text is present in different themes that students in our very school encounter on a daily basis. So those types of things can make things more AI resistant.
Thanks for those examples. And I think, people listening to the podcast, if they only walk away, Megan, with your idea of asking AI how to make their assignments more AI resistant,
Right.
that's worth the whole, however long this podcast will be. It's a great idea. And it's not like we're trying to like fool kids or like, aha, but it's actually getting at the deeper skills. I was just talking to someone who said, his child's, I think, was sixth grade teacher was having them do long division. And that's not a good use of a child's brain and time, right? We don't need to learn the skill of how to do long division. So it's coming up with skills that will help really prepare them for, the jobs that we don't know will exist in the next decade.
But I will say they should have the conceptual knowledge about division.
Yes,
So,
not the steps of long, the conceptual, yes.
what do we mean by division? What is that? What's the concept here for something as simple that we call it division? What does that actually mean? What's the concept? How do I apply that concept? How do I know what that means when I put it in a computer or a calculator or whatever? X divided by X is Y. What does that mean? So I would do that.
Yes.
I think there's also some things to think about when we look at students and the history of learners and what they want to accomplish. If we're not clear on what we want them to learn, and we're not clear on success, and they find a more expedient route to get a task done, they will, and I would too. So I think that's part of it is, what is the learning? So years ago, I said to a group of people, take your assignment and ask your Siri, your Google, Alexa, ask it to do it for you. And if Siri or Rob, I don't want to, whatever, if that system way back then could do it for you, it's not rigorous enough.
Yeah. Great idea. That's a great test right there. And do you want to say something about just the bias or even the inaccurate responses from AI before we go into some other examples?
Who wants to talk about hallucinations? Megan.
Well, I was just going to say, yes, hallucinations. I think being mindful that, there will be times when AI tells you things that are crazy and feel inaccurate and are inaccurate, and we want to be mindful of those. I will say it's because I don't have the exact numbers to today, but the instances of that are becoming less and less over time with the update of these different platforms. And I think that's really important for people to realize. The AI we were using a year ago was having far more inaccuracies and hallucinations than the AI is having that we are using today. But does not mean that we shouldn't keep the human in the loop and be mindful of what we're reading and I think or seeing in output. And I think to your point about bias, unfortunately our world and texts in our world and things that we read are inherently biased. And so AI is not is not free of that. And so we will see that there are things in AI output that feel biased or feel one-sided or have missing information to them. And I see this as an opportunity to teach that critical reading skill of what to look for and teaching how to analyze output and what to be looking for. I think when it comes to bias, I always want to look at output, and we talk about this in the book. When I look at output, I've just started to get really comfortable with, I always look for bias. Is there any bias in here? I think about, is there any inaccuracies? Is any of this information not true? And I always think about any missing information. Is there anything that's not here? And if I'm not an expert in the topic, I have to seek out something else to double check all three of those things. So
Well,
if I first look for all those three of those things on my own, great. If I don't know if it's correct or not, then I have to seek out another expert.
Well, and that's part of what brings back to why it's not going to replace teachers, right? Because we need professionals. And then I think, did you say Ethan Mollick is a colleague of yours?
Right. No, I mean, professionally, we know his work.
Okay. Well, whoever he is to you, he's. I was reading his blog this week, and he was saying that it was. I think the blog was like 10 ways to use AI and 5 not to.
Yeah.
And one of them is, if you don't have expertise, you cannot use AI to completely inform you because of these inaccuracies and these biases. So that's why we want to hire expert teachers who know their craft and who can use AI, but then also judge, is this off? Is this missing? Is this incomplete? Is this biased? So a plug to continue for the professionalism of teachers. So let's get into you in the book. You talk about 6 different educator functions that AI can serve. You say that AI can help us with 1, managing content, 2, fostering student engagement. Boy, do we need that at this point of the year. 3, meeting students' individual instructional needs, assessing student learning, providing effective feedback, and lifelong learning. So those are like the 6 areas. Those are huge chunks of teachers' jobs. So I'm wondering if maybe each of you could pick one of those big areas and one example. So how, could AI help us with that? And is there a specific AI site that you like for it? So if anyone wants to do content, engagement, needs, raise your hand if you want to go first. Okay, go ahead, Megan. Yeah,
am I talking too much? I hope not.
No.
Let's see. I don't know. I love them all, but why don't I'll start with the first one of managing content.
Yeah.
And I think that, when it comes to managing content, a few things. There are a lot of teacher-facing AI sites that are out there that will create a lot of content for teachers. Managing content, creating content, revising content is a big part of our jobs. And those sites are very helpful in knowing what's possible. It's important to note that a lot of those sites can also, the same things that can be done on those sites can be done on open large language models that are widely used, not just in the field of education. I think the biggest thing to me when it comes to managing content is thinking about how we can make sure that this is not just more quantity that we're creating, but that we're thinking about the quality of the content that we're managing and improving the quality. Dora Dembski out of Stanford at one of their summits last year talked about how we want AI to lead to qualitative change, not quantitative change. And so when it comes to managing content, you'll see, I think in that part, I hope we get across the point that you really want to bring your knowledge to the content that you're asking for AI to support you in. Doug gave the example of the prompt earlier when he said, we learned X, Y, and Z before break. I think that's a perfect example of how you create content using AI, but you bring to it the knowledge of the content that you want it to create.
That's great. Yeah. And I think some of the verbs that show how AI can help us with content, right? Identifying, right? Can you identify picture books for a 5th grade unit about the Underground Railroad? Organize, right? These are my objectives, and you feed in your objectives. Which order makes the most sense to teach them in, or revising, right? Can you revise this unit to include more hands-on learning, more higher order thinking? Can you suggest a timeline, a new timeline for this unit? I thought I'd have 12 days. Oh no, I only have 9 days. Like so some of that sort of consolidating, revising is just brilliant ways to think about having AI be our teaching assistant, Doug, for content. Sorry, Nancy, you had something to add about the content?
No, actually, I was going to talk about a different way to be able to use AI, a different educator function, and that is around coaching and feedback. And in this case, I'm going to talk about us using it as coaching and feedback for ourselves. So, for example, I mean, very often as teachers, we're reading about new ideas to be able to use, and we can't always figure out how am I going to apply that in my context. So use the chatbot as a coach for yourself, a professional coach for yourself. I was reading about blank, and it says that this technique can help me with blank. I'm a third grade teacher. I'm not sure how to make this work. Can you make some suggestions for how I might use this approach with my third graders? And allow that chatbot to give you some ideas. If it doesn't give you enough information, follow it up and be able to say, can you give me an example of what this might look like in a third grade classroom? As fellow educators, we are always tapping into the wisdom of one another, but sometimes there isn't a person there that can help in that moment. You can start by asking the chatbot for some ideas around something new that you haven't thought of before.
So in coaching you, would that fit under the lifelong learning? Is that sort of what you're thinking? Yeah, and you don't have to wait, right? You don't have to wait till next Friday's PD or next week's PLC to ask your peers, or or however, or you don't have to. It's a way to get in the moment, right? That's what you said, Megan. It's in the moment coach, what Nancy's talking about, with help for your own coaching you. I love that. I definitely, yeah, go ahead, Doug. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about a much simpler one as my colleagues were talking. And let's take the good, bad, and ugly of assessment.
Yes.
AI will generate lots of assessment items. Fast, quick. Problem is, they're not always good. They tend to become, if you don't give it really good guidelines, you tend to say, I need an assessment on blank. You're going to get literal surface level learning questions. And that could have a problem if we keep using those, because we're restructuring. The students only have to learn at the surface level. And then if we ask them a lot of questions at the literal surface level, then they learn to read from that perspective, looking for surface level information. And they pay attention to that. So we can, I mean, Nancy and Megan, we make a lot of assessments using AI, but it could be really ugly, could be bad. But if you give it parameters and you add, earlier we're talking about, a resistance. If we give it different context, have it represent knowledge in a variety of ways, we can actually get some of our work done on creating assessments. So I want to be careful that all of these can lighten the load of teachers. All of these things we're talking about. However, they might end up changing the way kids think and experience school in negative ways if we're not careful. That's, as Megan said earlier, that human in the loop that's paying attention to the content and saying, look, the output I just got is all literal. I have to go back to that AI system and say, no, I don't want that. Include inferential questions, include tasks that are a little bit less structured, where students have to grapple with the following ideas. I intend for students to have a bit of struggle in these tasks. So create that. You have to add that and then analyze it.
Or even know, like, the assessment you gave me doesn't align to the standards I want to teach. And so you have to input, copy and paste those standards and say, now rewrite it. And so that this assessment aligns to these standards that I'm teaching to. What about the flip side of the assessment, the feedback? I know for me, as a middle and high school teacher, those big stacks of grading that I had to do, that was a task that I could use some help with. Can someone describe how AI can help teachers with their providing feedback to students? Yeah, go ahead, Megan. Yeah.
I've got an example, and then chime in, Doug or Nancy, if you want to add on to it. But an example recently, I do think if you were to ask somebody who created an AI, generative AI site, especially for teachers, somebody might say to you, AI can give feedback on an entire writing assignment. AI will take student work and it will give you the feedback that you should give. I think Doug and Nancy and I all agree. I know Doug and Nancy and I all agree that that would not be the approach I would suggest. And I think when you go to that approach, it's one of those instances where you're not going to like what it provides anyways. And so a few of the things when it comes to using AI to give feedback that have been helpful is to see it, number one, as just a place where it can generate almost like a bank of ideas for you to pull from as you're giving feedback to students. So you might go back and forth with some prompts with AI and say, I'm giving feedback on blank. Here's the grade level I teach. This was my assignment. Give me a list of 10 things that I might say back or 5 things that I might say back. And then as a teacher, it's like you have that up on one screen and then on the other screen, you're giving the feedback and it just helps you to be more efficient. I think the other thing is if you are using AI with a rubric, and there are some sites that allow you to do that, I have found that it's far more helpful if you can say, focus on this one part of the rubric and even a part within a part. So I was actually doing this with the New York State extended response rubric the other day with some teachers, and we were looking at student examples and just playing around to see what it would do. And it did a much better job when we said, give us feedback specifically on the organizational part of this rubric. And then we even said the organizational part that falls under the number 3 or the, at grade level. So being really specific in your prompt when you are using AI to support you in giving feedback is huge. And then not over relying on AI to give all of the feedback, maintaining like your integrity and your expertise when it comes to using AI to assist you with that.
So I'm not completely relinquishing my pile of papers to grade and give feedback, but I am getting some help in streamlining the process. I like that. There's so many rich ideas. I am trying to be aware of the time because you all are so busy and important people. So people should definitely look at the book to get really, I mean, you provide, it's almost like a workbook, step-by-step instructions for all of these areas of how you can use AI for these areas. But I do want to say, the audience for this podcast is primarily school leaders, and this book is for teachers. And I did reach out to Corwin and I said, would you ask them to write an AI playbook for ed leaders? Did they pass my request on to you?
They did.
They did? Are you kidding?
I said, get in line. Everybody wants the book.
And we do, but I should give a plug.
Yeah.
We do have a leader's guide that goes with the playbook.
I did not
And
know.
it is on the site, on Corwin's site. I can also email it to you, Jen, and you could link it. But we have, it's not a full playbook for ed leaders, but it is a guide for administrators and educational leaders to help think through some of the elements of the playbook.
Okay, great. Well, I wasn't throwing it out there to give you more work. I was just wondering. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Doug.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the interest and the use. And I do want to highlight that we do have a leader's guide. But, when you think about the leader's responsibility, if we took that apart, providing feedback to teachers is an important part of this. Writing emails and summarizing your thinking, all of this is important. I was thinking the other day, Nancy was looking at something like we're revising a job description a little bit, and we're kind of like back and forth. What should it be? Nancy goes, just hold on. And and it just generated a whole bunch of ideas. Now we didn't adopt it exactly, but I just we hadn't thought of it this way. So every part of our life as leaders, including, the feedback statements we make to teachers, make a list of feedback statements that you could give a teacher using AI and store them in your mind. Craft your letters of recommendation. We're doing revising job description. So think about the things that you have to accomplish that take you away from being in classrooms, helping teachers and students. Here's a different example. So one of the things we do as leaders is we look at data and we make decisions about where to next. And data analysis can take a long time. Yeah. And that cuts the amount of time that we can intervene based on the data. Yep. So we've been working and saying, bring your achievement data, bring your whatever, system you use, bring the data. Have AI do the first analysis and tell you what the data say and defend it. and ask clarifying questions. Because once you understand the data, you can start to make informed decisions. And then you say, okay, if these are the three big things I'm seeing in this data, let's take school climate data. Let's say your students do one of the many school climate surveys, and you've got all this data and you've got all these percentages and you've got all this stuff. Feed it into AI because
Mm.
rapid and language analysis tool. And
Mhm.
then say to AI, what are the top needs at this school in terms of climate? And what are the three things we're great at according to the student's perspective of climate? Then and analyze and digest and read, and then say, what are the things we should keep doing? And what are the things we might need to revise to create a climate that's healthy and growth producing for the students and teachers in this school? Because then you have time to go take action because you didn't spend the next 3 hours trying to digest the data, process the data, because you got help.
Yeah, and there are very specific tasks that are specific to educational leaders, which is why I was pushing for the book. As to your data analysis, if I could share a quick anecdote, today I was in a high school in the Bronx. I'm in New York City, and the principal had this brilliant use for AI. He was distressed about attendance, so he decided to use it to analyze attendance data, and he was looking for patterns who was absent on the same day. And he found, this would have taken him hours, days, weeks, he found that couples, romantic couples, were frequently, this is a high school, absent on the same day. So he's hypothesizing one is homesick and the other says, hey, I'm kind of bored. Why don't you cut school and come spend the day? So now he knows where to intervene. But he would never have noticed, that Doug and Nancy have been absent on the same day for the last, 6 months or something. Anyway, brilliant. Lots of brilliant uses for AI, and I just saw that one today. I will end with a quick question, which is for the novice AI user who's overwhelmed by all of this, could you suggest one thing they could do tomorrow? And we also didn't mention any specific AI sites. So, and on what AI site? And then for the more experienced AI user who found this podcast to be too elementary, what is a sophisticated task you could recommend for them tomorrow? Could we just end with those
Oh,
two?
Nancy, could you please talk about table of specifications for 1 second?
I love that. So a table of specifications, this is for your more experienced AI users. A table of specifications lays out what are the skills and the concepts that you want to be able to assess at the end of a unit. And so by loading in what the standards are that you're going to be addressing during that unit, and what are some of those key skills and concepts, what AI can do is lay out a table of specifications for you of suggested ways in which to assess at all of the different levels of knowledge, skills, as well as concepts.
And is there a specific AI site that you recommend for that? No, any of them. Okay. Wonderful.
Whatever your favorite chatbot is, can do this kind of work.
Nancy did this live with a group of people that were having a hard time creating a table of specifications. It is a hard thing to do, to take 9 or 10 standards, smash them together, create all of the concepts, skills, processes, procedures. And what we learned is you give AI an example of a completed table. You tell it first to analyze the table, then you give it so it was back and forth. It's way more sophisticated than simply saying design a lesson plan or create an assessment. But to take a block of standards, and this is how curriculum writers think. This is how people who design big assessments think. How do I balance how much time, how much attention in different areas? Well, the table of specifications helps you with that. So if you have 9 standards, what one comes first, and how much time is going to be required, and what about this, and what about this? So
wow, amazing mind map. Yeah. Wow.
I will add on to that and just say this has been even just in the past couple days, I have been playing around more, and maybe you've noticed I think everybody kind of has their favorite AI sites and they talk about certain ones. I think Doug and Nancy and I, there's certain sites that we go to and we use, but we also want to make sure people realize that just one site will not do it all. And we want to explore. They're all growing and changing. But recently I was on Gemini like 2 days ago, and the capabilities Gemini now has to pull right into Google Forms and Google Docs and Google Spreadsheets is really, really, it's getting very advanced. So I'm thinking that table of specifications, if I were doing that, even just in what I figured out in the past day or two, I might take that to a Gemini because of now how it's pulling so quickly to and from spreadsheet on Google Docs. Anyways, just a little tidbit that for those that are out there. I know not everybody's on Google Docs, but
Great. And anyone, the low Frank, I'm overwhelmed and I listen to this podcast. What's one thing I can do tomorrow? Tell me the site and what's one thing I should do.
Sorry. Go ahead, Nancy.
Go ahead, Megan.
I'll do one really quick. And I won't even say the site. Use it to make more of what already works. If you already have a list of good prompts or meaning to give kids to say more, or good questions or good story problems, and you just need more, you need another mentor text, you need another example, make more of what already works, because then you can double check it and then you know what you're looking for. So that's always a low-hanging fruit. First time users, make more of what you're already using.
And what a strengths-based approach. That's great. Nancy, yeah.
I would offer, if you're new to AI, have fun with it and use it in your own personal life first to be able to figure out what to do. I'll use an idea that Megan actually taught us. She took pictures of items that were in her refrigerator and loaded those pictures in and then said, what can I make for dinner tonight? And she went back and forth and had conversation about what she was looking for and so on. And you know what? It made a whole list of suggested items that she could have for dinner that night based on what it was that she had in the fridge already.
I think that's great. You start with an early win, right? If you see how something works. It was a personal example, Nancy, that got me into AI. I had some college friends and across the country, and we wanted to meet for a weekend, and everybody was busy, and it was dumped on me. And I'm like, I don't know where we can fly to direct. That's too hard to figure out. So AI, where is a place in the US we can fly direct from Boston, Seattle, New York? And it spit out Phoenix, and we went to Phoenix. I'm not kidding you. So it was deeply useful. It probably saved me hours of trying to figure out where to meet. I did it like that. So yes, have an early win. I love it. Thank you all. Thank you for your work and for the longest podcast. Sorry to keep you. This is so useful. If people want to learn more about your work or this book, would anybody care to share where to send them?
Where to find the book?
Or other work that you're doing.
Corwin.com is a great place to find the book. Go right on that Corwin.com website. You can also follow us on most social media, and we put out lots of stuff on social media as well.
There's on Corwin's website, there's the admin guide, there's a study guide for the playbook that are both on there. And then I'll give a plug for our boot camp. Doug and Nancy and I recorded hours and hours of different self-paced modules in addition to the playbook. That is a great option for guiding people through the work of the playbook with lots of really hands-on examples. You hear from teachers. So that's another opportunity to learn alongside of us.
Just brilliant. Well, thank you so much. That's the Artificial Intelligence Playbook. Thank you, Megan, Douglas, and Nancy. This has been wonderful. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much, and have a good one.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, you. Everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to me, Mike, at schoolleadershipshow.com. And please consider rating the podcast in iTunes and leaving a comment. And definitely pass the show along to your colleagues.